Okay. I've had a bit of time to rest. This is part 8. Winter handiwork. Hey, mine. Why are you saving the small silvers with the guild every time? Why not just bring it all home? Asked Lutz sullenly. Well, she probably wants to save the money just in case anything unexpected comes up. And 2, having that much money at your house would incite people to come rob you. We were on our way from the Merchants Guild after leaving the carriage. I'm doing the same thing because I figured there's some point to it if you're doing it, but I always thought I'd take all the money I made back home, so it feels kind of like I'm doing a bad thing. The idea of saving money was a distant one to poor commoners who barely scraped by, as it was. At most, they would start stashing a bit of money away during autumn for winter preparations, and that was a lot different from registering in the guild to store money there. Naturally, what parents did became common sense to children, and most of them brought their apprentice earnings back home to help their family. I'm saving for the next time we need to invest in a startup fund. Say what now? Startup fund? Said Lutz, tilting his head in confusion, so I tried to explain to him in the simplest possible terms using our own experience as an example. Remember how hard it was to get a single nail when we wanted to make paper and didn't have any tools, money, or even adults to help us? It wasn't too long ago that we asked Otto for help and ended up with Benno yelling at us. Lutz, remembering that, nodded with a bitter expression. We were lucky enough that Benno bought my simple all-in-one shampoo and paid all the money we needed for stuff. But you understand how expensive all our tools were, right? In order to start something new, you need a lot of money. A pot, lumber, ashes, thread, bamboo work. Yeah, that must have been really expensive, thanks to all the places we'd been going to lately. Lutz had come to understand the prices of things sold in stores, not just stands at the market. He paled at the thought of how much starting up our paper-making venture would have cost. So, I'm saving up my money for next time. Benno said he was done paying for our stuff once we finished the prototypes, right? If we want to expand our paper-making process by buying more tools, or if we want to start something new at all, we'll need a lot of money. Everything costs money. Even moving on to making books, we'll need new tools. So it's all for the future, huh? I peered at Lutz as he made an expression that made it seem like he kinda agreed and kinda didn't. He must not have realized that he had much more pressing and important reason to save money than I did. The thought must have been escaping him. After thinking for a few moments, I started to speak slowly. I don't really want to say this, and I don't even want to think about it, but if your family still won't let you become a merchant after your baptism, what will you do? Have you thought about your future? After scrunching up his face miserably, Lutz muttered in a weak voice, I was thinking I'd ask Benno to let me be a living apprentice. That's all you could do if you want to be a merchant. I'm glad you didn't say you would give up, I smiled, which made Lutz let out a little sigh of relief. It would take a lot of guts for a kid his age to run away from home, and I was sure he was still debating it in his head. But regardless, he was fighting for his dream, and fighting for his dream would take money, of course. But think about it, Lutz. After you've run away from home and become a live-in apprentice, there'll be time before you get your first pay, and you'll need to both survive until then and afford your own apprentice clothes. Your life will be a lot different depending on if you have your own money you can do anything with. Lutz's head shot up as if he finally understood. We made eye contact and I nodded. There's nothing wrong with saving the money you earned yourself. You might feel guilty since everyone is using all their pay to survive, but you're not even old enough to be working yet. And you've already brought home 13 large coppers in just 5 days. You're bringing home more money than Ralph is, and he's an apprentice, right? So it's fine. It's all okay. Right. I am making more than Ralph, huh? Said Lutz, grinning with pride. Ralph had just begun his apprentice work, and thus probably made around 8 to 10 large coppers a month, which was far less than what we had already earned. Thanks, mine. I feel a lot better now. I'm glad, I said with a smile before Lutz suddenly turned around and crouched. What are you doing, Lutz? I'll carry you on my back. You must be pretty tired by now, huh? You're looking kinda sick, said Lutz, making me reflexively touch my cheeks. It didn't feel hot, so I wasn't suffering from a fever yet. I look sick. Not too much, but we're gonna see Benno again tomorrow, so you shouldn't push yourself. Don't forget mine. My most important job is keeping you healthy. Okay, thanks. It was true that we had walked around so much today that I was getting exhausted. If Lutz was getting worried, then I was definitely close to being in a dangerous state. I got on Lutz's back and he carried me home. I naturally climbed the stairs on my own, but when I started falling over on the way there, he took my hand and helped me up. To be honest, the last set of stairs from my floor were the hardest part of any trip. I'm home, Mom. Oh, hello, Lutz. It's rare for you to come all the way up here. Is mine feeling okay? We were just going to show Benno the hairpins, but we met with the guildmaster and ended up going to his place. Since he wanted us to deliver the hairpins ourselves, I mean. Thanks to that, mine ended up pretty tired. I see, thanks as always, Let's. You help us more than you know, said Mom while putting a middle copper into Let's' hand. Which reminded me that I had my own money to hand over. Oh, that's right. Here, Mom, before I forget. Mine, what in the world did you do? Mom paled as she saw the 5 large coppers I had. She froze in place with her eyes wide open, having naturally not expected the hairpins to be worth that much money. This is part of what we were paid for Frida's hairpins. Didn't I mention that we were paying a lot since nobody else sells them? You did, but I still didn't expect this much money. Sorry, Mom, I guess I really shouldn't tell her that this is less than half of what we were paid, and I'm keeping a small silver for myself. Is she telling the truth, Let's? She is, Mrs. Effa. I just have just as much since I helped her make them. We split the pay halfway, said Let's, showing Mom his own large coppers. That was enough for her to believe us, and she sighed in relief. Mom, do you not trust your daughter at all? Also, Benno told us to see him next afternoon, so we're going to the store again tomorrow. Try and get her to rest as much as possible. Thank you so much, Let's. Mom shut the door after seeing Let's off, then sent me to bed with her eyebrows arched a little in anger. How many times have I told you not to push yourself? But in any case, you certainly sold those hairpins for a lot of money, didn't you? Frida's rich, and we used expensive thread, not to mention that we made 2 hairpins instead of just 1. Also, since this is a busy time for winter preparation, they paid us extra. Nobody else could have paid it this much. I see. They were considerate since now is a busy time for us, then. It looked like my mom was now imagining Frida and the Guildmaster to be honorable rich citizens who were considerate even to us poor folk. She would probably never meet them in real life, so I felt no need to crush her dreams with the reality. Mom, having finally come to terms with her child coming home with a ridiculous amount of money, left the bedroom to start preparing supper. Now alone in the bedroom, I realized that I really had been pushing myself pretty far and started drifting off as soon as I rested my head on the pillow. I ended up falling into a deep sleep and missing supper entirely. When I woke up, it was morning. Since we were visiting Benno's store in the afternoon, I was basically stuck in bed until then. Probably due to how much I had been walking around lately, my body felt really heavy and sluggish, despite how well I had slept. It is clear to everyone that I was on the verge of getting sick with a fever, and even after starting winter prep, my family wouldn't let me help them. Stay in bed, mind. You've been working too hard lately. You're trying to make more than me, huh? Said Dad while checking the window shutters. Mom and Tully spreading out and drying the winter blankets and carpet were no different. You're going to Benno's today, aren't you? You'll collapse on the way there if you don't rest right now. You can't help much during winter preparation anyway, so conserve your energy for where it's useful. None of them were about to let me leave the bed. Having no other choice, I snuggled up underneath the blankets and watched my family work busily. I think I would be at least a little helpful since I learned a lot about winter preparation last year, but sure, whatever. They were probably being overprotective since I fell into a deep sleep right after coming home with 5 large coppers. Inside the house, I couldn't do much, but in the span of 5 days, I had brought home 13 large coppers, then passed out and missed supper. I can imagine that they interpreted that as me overworking myself. I guess that wasn't too far from the truth, since simple walking around was pretty hard work for me. When 4th bell rang, signifying noon, I bundled up in warm clothing and left with my tote bag. I climbed down the stairs and saw Lutz, who immediately grimaced. Mine, you're not looking too good. Maybe I should go to Benno's alone. I think it's because we've been so busy lately, but still, Benno said he wants to determine the price of the hairpins today, so I need to go. If it were just the thread, you could get it on your own, but I really want to be there when deciding on the price. Yeah, the price is a bit, much for me. I still don't get how that stuff works. Since Lutz still didn't know all his numbers, deciding on the price would be too much for him. It was especially important that I go today and negotiate with Benno on the price of the hairpins. Alright, at least let me carry you then. Huh? I couldn't make you do that. You just carried me home yesterday. I'll be carrying all the thread on the way back, and that probably will take all I've got. You should save your strength. Oh, but I was in bed all morning. I'm fine. At times like these, you never know when you're fine. And at times like these, you're so stubborn that you never give in. I murmured to myself internally while getting on Liz's back. I myself had barely grown at all, but it felt like Liz's back was even bigger than yesterday. It was a little frustrating that he was growing so much than me despite the same age, even taking my sickness into account. Lutz? Is mine not feeling well? After seeing Lutz carrying me on his back, Mark's eyes widened and he quickly walked up to us. Mark had grown sensitive to my health. I had actually traumatized him by collapsing unconscious in front of him, and suffice to say I felt pretty bad about it. She's been leaving her house every day, and that's taking its toll on her. She's probably end up in bed for a while starting tonight, so we want to finish our business here as soon as possible. Understood. Mark gave a single nod and guided us to Benno's room. Sir, mine and Lutz have arrived. Let him in. Mark opened the door with a creak and walked in with us. I've been told that mine's health is poor right now. It would be wise to finish the meeting as soon as possible. Got it. Take a seat, you two. Once we reached the table and sat down, Benno started discussing our winter handiwork right away. He told us the price of the thread. I estimated how many hair ornaments we would be able to make from this amount of thread, and from that we decided the price. Mr. Benno, I don't want to make the selling price of these hair ornaments too high. We're using cheap thread here, and I would like for a lot of people to buy them. I understand how you feel, but I'm not going to sell them cheap from the start. The market price will drop as more of them enter the market, and starting cheap isn't going to help that. We'll make a lot more starting high, and working our way down. 3 large coppers should be good. That was just expensive enough that even my family could afford one if we tightened our belts for a bit. The idea was that poor families would be able to just barely justify it by having sisters pass it down over the years, and over time we would slowly drop the price. That seems fair. Okay. I nodded, and the conversation moved on to our share of the profit. For each hairpin, after taking out the handling and material fees, you will earn 5 middle coppers. That's me being generous, since you're the only ones that can make these, and it's a new kind of handiwork that had never been done before. 5 middle coppers when you're being generous? I knew you were overcharging Freda. If we had been working with Benno's initial price, we would have been making around 5 small silvers for every 2 hairpins. That was 100 times more money, literally. That was the price the geezer asked for himself, so who cares? He did it to himself. Okay, how much are things made as winter handiwork usually worth? I had helped Tilly make baskets last winter, but it was never paid for my efforts, so I never really thought about how much each basket was worth. We merchants take our hauling fee, and the bosses of carpenter shops or sewing shops take their handling fee too, so usually the people making this stuff get a single middle copper per product if they're lucky. Usually it's less. You're making a little more since we're not dealing with the boss of any shops, but still. What? Not even a single middle copper? Isn't that way too cheap? My immediate reaction was shock, but after a moment I remembered that homemade crafts were pretty cheap even in Japan. Bead straps, for instance, were generally only priced at 100 yen or less. With that in mind, a single product being only worth a middle copper or less wasn't odd at all. We were making a killing with our 5 middle coppers. Usually only the boss of a shop has the right to buy and sell products like that. Profit will change a lot depending on how large of a handling fee that boss takes. Don't you have experience with this kind of thing? I figured you did since you were the one who brought up making hairpins as your winter handiwork, said Benno, which made me think back to last year's handiwork. Last year I helped my older sister Tuli with her handiwork, but I just made the stuff without knowing how much they were worth, how much of a profit they were making, or how much a handling fee the boss was taking. I wasn't paid anything. Wait, speaking of which, don't you need to be registered with the Merchant Guild to sell things you made? Is my mom registered? My mom had taken our baskets off somewhere, but I never heard of her visiting the Merchant's Guild. She even seemed interested when I mentioned going there myself. What, does your mother run a market stand? No, she just works at a dye workshop. Then whatever you did was probably handiwork her workplace gave out. Since the boss is paying them for work done, the craftspeople themselves don't have to register with the guild. Only the boss has to register, and they'll do all the selling themselves. Apparently, handiwork given by a workplace was considered a part of a work, so the workers themselves didn't have to register with the Merchants Guild. But they did have to be registered with the respective guild related to their craft. My handiwork last year was given to my mom by her workplace. She left it to Tuli, and then I helped her. What'd you make? I made baskets like these. They were pretty simple since I didn't have much experience making them, but I had a lot of spare time to spend on them, so some ended up really looking nice. I held in my tote bag with pride, and for some reason Benno grimaced, rubbing his temples. You again? Huh? What does he mean by me again? You know, I get the feeling I've seen him grimace like that several times before. Did I do something wrong again? I remember seeing some fancy baskets in the middle of all the normal ones being sold last spring. For handiwork, you get paid based on quantity, not quality. So most people pick pretty crappy baskets to make as much as money as possible. Yours stood out a lot compared to them. No! I had put some extra effort into the baskets since I had the time, and Tuli wanted to learn, never expecting in my wildest dreams that they would end up standing out in the marketplace. I went all the way to the workshop to ask who made them, but they had gathered all the baskets at once and didn't keep track of which worker made which. Whew, that was a relief. I was in fact self-aware of my own weirdness and tried my hardest to blend in, but I got the feeling that wasn't really working out. No, you think? People making their own baskets naturally put more effort into it, so your bag didn't stick out to me, and it lacked the decoration for me to make the connection. You know, all the odd things I've come across this past half a year have led back to you, mine. As I thought of the fancy baskets, hairpins, shampoo, and plant paper, I couldn't help but grab onto my head in agony. Benno was making me realize that nothing I had done was the work of someone trying to blend in. I felt so awkward that I couldn't help but give a small apology. I'm sorry. More importantly, I see that you have a habit of putting more effort into things when you're bored. Listen up. When making those hairpins, follow the same design you used for Thule's and don't change it up. This isn't negotiable. Understand? I hadn't expected the backs to stand out like they did, and I didn't want the same to happen with the hair ornaments. Keeping the design identical for all of them should dodge that problem entirely. Okay, they'll be different colors, but they'll all be the same design. Alright, that should be about it. Oh, wait, one more thing. You said you wanted to study over the winter, right? Here, I'll lend you this. Take a look once you get home. What is it? I started to look at the wooden card Benno gave me, but he squeezed my cheek. I said, look at it after you get home. Understand? Yeah. Sheesh, you can get it back once your fever's gone down. Get home as soon as possible. Don't take your eyes off this idiot. I get the feeling she'll try to read the card on her way home and end up in an accident. Remembering the time in my Urano days that I got hit by a car due to reading a book on my way home from school, kept my mouth shut and looked away. Yeah, you have no room to talk on that. Mark had put the thread we'd ordered into a box, which Let's carried on the way home. We left with Mark watching on, looking worried. As we took our time walking slowly, I started to talk to Let's about something I wanted to discuss before I ended up bedridden. Hey Let's, about our share of the hairpin money, yeah? The flower parts take a lot more time to make, so would you be fine if I take 3 out of the 5 middle coppers? Sure, heck, I'd be fine taking just 1 of the coppers. A 1 and 4 split more accurately reflected the amount of work being done, but my reasoning for the 2 and 3 split laid elsewhere. That'll make the math a lot harder for you, so let's go with 2 and 3. Math? Uh-huh. I think we should hire our families to do this work with a pay of 2 middle coppers for each flower part, 1 middle copper for each pin part. We could split the other 2 middle coppers. Huh? Our family? Let's look confused, so I continued. Given how fast my family works, I think we would only be able to make about 30 hairpins per month at best. We don't want to waste our leftover pins, so I thought about how you could ask your family to make 30 pins a month and take a handling fee for them. You want me to do this so I can be a merchant? Yes! Let's understood what I was getting at after remembering how I had described the difference between a worker and a merchant. That's right. Don't you want to try copying Benno? You'll have to study hard over the winter if you want your apprenticeship to go well, and that won't be possible if you're spending all your time making pins. Though you would get more money if you did. I understood that it didn't feel great to take money from your family, but if you weren't willing to do business with them, then becoming a merchant will be a lot harder. After hearing my explanation, Let's glared at the ground for a bit, then his head shot up. I'll give it a shot. The thread needed to be stored in my place, so Let's carried it up the stairs for me. My family was naturally surprised to see me coming home with a bunch of thread, and thus stopped their work to take a look. Let's, why all the thread? Mom, why are you asking that to Let's and not me, your daughter? Peeved by the difference in trust Mom felt toward us, I began to explain, this is thread to make hairpins. Benno bought it for us so we could sell the completed products to him. This is going to be my winter handiwork, so please don't use it on other things, okay? Thanks, Let's. Have some of this if you'd like. Mom handed a tiny jar of freshly made jam to Let's. He took it with his eyes shining and raced home. I'll take this to the storeroom. You go ahead and sleep, mine. Dad carried out the basket and pushed me into bed. Oh, at least let me wash myself first. I didn't get a chance to yesterday, and I'm feeling gross since I went out yesterday. Thule called over. I was just heating up some water, and I want to get clean too, so let's wipe each other down, okay? Thanks, Thule. Thule and I had been washing each other for about a year, but at this point she started to feel uncomfortable after about 3 days of not washing. She prepared the bucket of bathing water near the hearth, the warmest part of our house, and talked to me while wiping herself down. A year ago, you were doing a bunch of weird things I didn't understand, and now you're going out and working for money. I don't know what to think about all this, really. Are you making baskets again this year? I asked Thule while wringing a wet towel above the bucket. She moved her braid aside and washed behind her neck while answering. The handiwork Mom's job gives pays more than my job, so yeah, I was planning to start cutting the wood and peeling off the bark for it. Wait, what? You don't have to do your job's winter handiwork? Wasn't it mandatory work given by the boss? I had thought from Benno's explanation that people had a quota they had to fill. Maybe it's different for the apprentices. I tilted my head in confusion and Thule giggled. It's just a side job to earn a little extra money. Some people make a lot of extra and others are so busy making clothes for their family they can't spare the time, so it's not mandatory or anything. Oh, okay. Everyone's in a different situation. I had been planning to ask my family for their help after they finished their quota, but if there weren't a quota in the first place, maybe Tuli could help me from the start. I looked at her and smiled. My handiwork is going to be making more of those hairpins. I can get 2 metal coppers for each completed flower part I make for them. What? Really? That's a lot of money. Can I make them too? Let's do it together, I said, causing Tuli to start jumping for joy. Her green eyes were shining as she planned to make tons of flowers and earn a lot of money. Hey, mine. What do I need to do to get ready? Beto gave me all the thread I need, and Lutz is making the pin parts, so nothing really. We just need thin needles to sew them. That's really easy. Tilly started to laugh, then she froze in place and pointed behind me, blinking rapidly. I turned around to see Mom, who was standing still with her hand on her cheek. She was thinking really hard about something. Mine, can I join you two after finishing your special dress? Let's? My mom looked really pumped about starting this. We might need more pins. Oh dear. Lutz's training curriculum. Just as Lutz predicted, I caught a fever while I sat around in bed. It was a slight fever born from exhaustion, so the worst part of it was just my body feeling heavy. It wasn't like the devouring heat that came close to eating me alive, so it would probably get better after a little bit of rest. Or so I thought, before 3 entire days passed. I was getting annoyed at the unending fever, but I would just get yelled at if I left the bed, so I had no choice but to keep lying around despite feeling groggy from sleeping too much. I am so bored! It was pig day. Unlike last year, my family trusted me just enough to leave me alone, so they left early in the morning without me. They had left a sandwich for lunch and a bunch of cups of water by the bed, so I didn't end up hungry or thirsty. I could have gotten out of bed if I wanted to, but I knew that would just make the fever last longer, so my only real choice was to stay quiet in bed. But without anyone to talk to, I was just so bored. I wished I had a book. Although I had plenty of failed experimental paper lying around, I hadn't gotten the opportunity to do anything with it, so it was just packed in the bottom of the wooden box I put my clothes in. Reason being, we had been really busy ever since completing the experimental paper, and I wanted to take my time with my first book so it would be as good as possible. Most importantly, though, the paper was experimental and thus varied widely in quality, size, and so on. I had paper nearing completion, and paper so bad it would fall apart if I picked it up too fast. Some paper was so thin and flimsy I could see through it. Some paper was so hard it would crack if I held it too hard. It'd be easy to just use the paper that ripped a little when we were peeling it off the drawing board, but it had big holes in it, and it was a little hard for me to just cut off the usable parts with a knife. Wish I had 2 thin, sharp blades that could be used like scissors. Making books with paper like this would take a lot of time. It seemed that this winter would be a busy one for me. Oh, that reminds me, it's not a book, but Benno gave me that board thing to read. I remembered that Benno had given me a wooden board and told me to read it after getting home. Reading while in bed wouldn't pose any problems at all. I got out of bed, opened the box containing my clothes, and took the wooden board about the size of an A4 sheet of paper out of my tote bag. I then read it while lying in bed. This is a curriculum for training new apprentices. On the board were written the bare essentials that a newly hired apprentice had to learn. If split into 6 broad sections, it would look like this. Know the customary greetings and how to dress well. Be capable of writing the alphabet and all numbers. Know how to use a calculator. Have a reasonable grasp on how to count money. Memorize which products our store deals in. Memorize the names of our suppliers. Out of these, I think the only thing we can learn together over winter are writing, math, and counting money. I think every apprentice will have to learn those last 2 things, so they shouldn't be our priority. I murmured to myself while setting up a study plan for the winter. Now then, I wondered how many letters and numbers Lutz had memorized by heart by now. It was easy to forget if you didn't use them after first learning them. Once I confirmed how much he knew, I could start teaching him again, starting with what he had forgotten. Maybe instead of using example sentences, I could teach him how to write supply orders and letters about meeting reservations. Those would involve words he would need for work, so learning them now wouldn't hurt. To be honest, I also only knew words related to work for the most part. There were no dictionaries in this world, and I had learned to read and write from Otto, someone trying to train me into his assistant accountant. Benno, a merchant, and Mark, the former's right-hand man. Thanks to them, I had learned a lot of practical words that related to business and the like, but I didn't have a lot of common verbs and nouns. I know how to add and subtract with a calculator, but I'll have to ask Mark how to multiply and divide with it. I could teach Lutz math through writing on my slate, but I needed to learn to use the calculator as well if I didn't want to stick out among the other apprentices. If possible, I wanted to be capable of everything the others were. I want to teach Lutz elementary school math up to a 3rd grade level, but that'll be hard without a textbook or worksheets. I should prioritize teaching him to count numbers and convert numbers into units of money, starting with thorough lessons on 1-digit addition and subtraction. Once that's done, I can move on to trying to get him to at least understand the concept of multiplication and division. Well, I might need more than this winter for that. Naturally, teaching 3 years worth of math in a single winter was a bit much, even when cutting out the fat and focusing on core principles. I let out a sigh and felt the heat within me stir. Feeling the pressure of the devouring heat trying to force its way out, I tensed up my temples and gritted my teeth. Go back down, I wasn't calling for you! I pushed it down into me, visualizing a cover being put on a pot, and let out another sigh. It hadn't lasted long, but pushing down the devouring heat had made me hungry. I picked up the sandwich my family left for me and took a big bite, chewing while thinking about dressing well and greeting customers. This category is the biggest problem for me. Dress well and know the customary greetings. I don't know how well they want us to dress, and neither I nor Lutz know what kind of specific phrases merchants use when greeting each other, customers, and so on. You might need to get someone to jot all this stuff down for you. I know from seeing Benno's employees and those on the 3rd floor of the Merchants Guild that we would have to buy new clothes for work. But I would have to check with Benno to see how expensive those clothes were. He would also have to tell us about the greetings. I knew it wasn't customary in this world to bow one's head, but I didn't know what they did instead. Up until now, I had just been bluffing my way through with a smile. That said, it didn't seem like Benno or the Guildmaster had exchanged any special greetings. I started drifting off while looking at the board Benno gave me, and when I opened my eyes, my family was home and carrying the butchered pig meat into our winter storage room. Welcome home. Oh, you're awake. How's your fever? It's gone down, I think. I felt pretty good after waking up, so I could assume that my fever had gone down. Tomorrow will probably be spent inside to test the waters, but after that I would finally be free. A day passed. Lutz, wearing a scavenging basket on his back, came to visit me before heading to the forest. We couldn't talk for long despite me feeling better, since I had to stay in bed to make sure I would recover, but still I was really happy to see him. Hey, you mine, I heard your fever's gone down. Thule told me when we met up downstairs. Uh-huh. It went down last night. After another day of rest, I should be able to walk around. Alright, I was worried. It's been a while since you've been stuck in bed for that long. Both Lutz and my family had gotten very worried about me since, indeed, it had been some time since one of my fevers had lasted for multiple days. Heard you couldn't go see the pigs get butchered this year either. Well, I can't help it in this season. I had gotten more used to seeing animals getting butchered, but I didn't exactly consider Pig Day an exciting holiday like my family did. In fact, I thought it was pretty lucky that it came and went while I was stuck in bed. I looked at the board Benno gave us the other day and made a study plan for us. Do you think we could go to Benno's tomorrow? I want to give the board back and buy a calculator. Oh yeah, what was written on it anyway? Lutz snapped to attention and leaned forward, remembering that Benno had lent us a board. He was ready to listen. It's about what his apprentices learn. How many letters and numbers do you remember? All the ones I've been taught, he replied as if it was completely natural. I was so surprised that my eyes widened. What? Really? You didn't forget them even though you never used them? I don't get many chances to learn that kind of stuff, and I don't want to forget what I already know, so I wrote them on the ground with my fingers to practice. Once you got me the slate, I started practicing with that instead. Wow, Lutz, that's great. Good job, so clever. Lutz was a harder worker than I had imagined. Or maybe my perspective had just been biased by my upbringing when public schools were natural and I could easily get my hands on any information I wanted. At no point in my life had I worried about forgetting something. If I forgot, I could just read another book. I could relearn everything as long as I remembered which book I read about it in. There was no need to memorize every little thing. I'm not that great. You're a lot more impressive than me, mine. You can read all those big numbers. Okay then, I'll teach you how to read big numbers. Grab my slate for me, okay? 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. I taught him the words for increasingly big numbers. He could read up to 100 easily, since those numbers were usually in the market, but the rest were a mystery to him. I pointed at the slate, counting along the factors of 10, and Lutz soon joined me. Once I went over each unit several times, I wrote a random number on my slate. Okay, quiz time. How would you write 612,413? It's 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, million, 10 million, so... Lutz folded his arms with a pretty serious look, and before I knew it, he could count up to 10 million. He could focus harder, or perhaps had a better memory than your average person, but either way, he was smarter than I expected. He would probably learn a lot over the winter. If he gets smart, I'll lose the one advantage I have over him, I thought, getting depressed on the inside when suddenly Tuli came back with a bucket of water. Wait, Lutz, weren't you going to the forest? Everybody's already left. Whoa, sorry, mine, I've got to go. Thanks for teaching me. Lutz hurriedly stood up and ran off. At his speed, he would probably catch up with the others before they reached the gate. I waved as he left. The day passed. My parents gave me permission to go outside, so Lutz and I left to go see Benno in the afternoon when he wasn't the least busy. The door was shut and a guard was standing in front of it. I guess it's still noon break. Want to go back to the plaza and sit around for a while? Standing for too long is not going to do you any good. That sounds good. I think I should try and sit more often today. We started to kill the time by talking, but the guard recognized us by now and gestured us forward. I'll ask the boss if I can let you two in. Wait here for a bit, please. Thank you. The guard went into the store, then returned with us in a snap and held the door wide open for us. He led us through the dim store, darkened by the drawn curtains blocking sunlight, and opened the door to an inner room for us. The room was bright thanks to the open windows and a sizable fire in the fireplace. Benno, who had apparently been working, set aside his pen and ink to stand up. Feeling better, mine? Mm-hmm. We came to give the board back. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions about it? Yeah, nah, go ahead. I've got something to talk about too, but you can start, said Benno, gesturing us toward the same table as always. Thank you for lending me this. Using it, I managed to put together a study plan for us. Oh? But there were a few things I wanted to ask about. I know that we need to dress well, but what do you specifically mean by well? Also, neither of us know if merchants have specific greetings and so on that they use. Benno nodded and looked at us. Basically, neither of you look too dirty despite being commoners who live near the staff gate. So you just need work clothes and new pairs of shoes. You'll be able to buy everything you need with about 10 small silver, so if you start saving now, you should have enough by summer. 10 small silvers. Glad I copied mine and saved my money, murmured Lutz, seeming dazed. All of Lutz's clothes were hand-me-downs sewn by his own mother, so it was probably shocking for him to hear that he would need to pay at minimum 10 small silvers just for clothes and shoes. It was surprising to me too, but I knew the clothes here weren't mass-produced, so had expected that made-to-order clothes would be about that expensive. And expensive as they were, that we would be able to afford them if we worked hard and made enough paper by spring. Moving on, you've got to work on how you talk to people. Lutz, if you don't learn to talk more politely like mine does, I won't be able to let you interact with customers, said Benno, making Lutz freeze. It was hard to learn polite language without having people around you who used it. I tried thinking about who spoke the most politely out of anyone who Lutz knew. I think you can learn a lot from how Mr. Mark speaks. That feels kind of weird. I can imagine that changing the manner in which you speak could feel a little uncomfortable and strange, like changing your very personality. But if he didn't do that, he wouldn't be allowed to interact with customers, especially in a store like Benno's, which was increasingly shifting its demographic towards the nobility. Interacting with noble society forced one to dress well, speak well, and uphold proper manners. Don't worry, you can do it if you try. Mr. Benno's all gruff and mean when he's with us, but he's perfectly polite with customers. So all you have to do is learn to shift around based on who you're talking to. Benno hadn't been particularly polite with even the Merchant's Guild Guildmaster, but I knew he could do it if he wanted to, otherwise he wouldn't have made it this far as a merchant. You won't have to be polite with me or your family or anyone like that, and you've heard me talk differently when I'm with Benno, the Guildmaster and stuff, right? Did you think I sounded weird? Now that you mention it, nah, you talk so normally I never thought it was weird. If you switched on a dime, nobody would really notice you changed at all. It might feel weird at first, but over time you get used to it. So how about you learn how Mr. Mark talks and mimic him just when you're working? You could start by saying sir, ma'am, and so on. I offered some examples, and Lutz nodded. All right, yes, sir. No, sir is for boys, not girls. Benno, who had been listening in on our exchange, burst into laughter and hit the table while choking out laughs. What is so fucking funny? Tears formed in his eyes, and he held his stomach while laughing like an idiot. I don't know how far you'll get with him over the winter, but hey, good luck. I glared at Benno, but he didn't even flinch. I clenched my fist and swore with an iron resolve that I would get Lutz speaking politely in no time, which reminded me to ask about something. Oh, right, Mr. Benno. Yeah? I would like a calculator for us to learn with. We won't ever get used to using one without practice. Mark's fingers danced as he used the calculator, moving rapidly without pause as they enacted his thoughts without a single hitch or error. We probably wouldn't reach his level with it, but even abacuses needed practice to learn. A calculator, huh? If you don't mind a used one from my store, I can sell you one for 6 large coppers. You just want one for the both of you, yeah? Yes, please. We tapped guild cards with Benno, each of us giving him 3 large coppers. He then gave us the calculator. Now you can practice using a calculator, let's. Yeah. Got anything else to ask? Questioned Benno, which reminded me. Oh, we need to order a contract paper-sized suceta before the spring, but just write your supply orders. Mark already knows where to take them, so leave them with him. What? But Mark had said that if I didn't deliver the supply orders myself with accompanying details, I would have only myself to blame if a mix-up happened. I shouldn't just leave it all to him. There's something else I need you to work on. Come on now, write up the supply orders. At Benno's encouragement, I took out the supply order writing set from my tote bag. I only had one more board for writing supply orders on. Mr. Benno, I'm out of boards for the supply orders. Yeah, 'cause you ordered a lot of stuff. Have some more. Thanks. Also, I'm almost out of ink. We had used a lot of ink, both writing a bunch of supply orders and testing how well it worked with various experimental pieces of paper. Upon hearing my request, Benno's mouth twitched. I want to charge you for it, but sure. Consider it part of my initial investment. He said, which reminded me, Otto said that ink was expensive enough that children generally couldn't use it. I had never heard its actual price, though, so I timidly asked Benno for it. This may be rude of me, but if you were to charge me for it, how much would ink cost? About 4 small silvers. What? Listen, I couldn't afford that even if we pulled our savings together. Don't waste it. Right, of course not. I wanted to use ink for my bookmaking, but I would have to give up on buying some myself. Using my leftover soot pen would be much better. I scratched out my supply orders. I was used to writing them by this point. The tip of my pen ended up rounded in no time, so I had let's shave it into a point. We then asked Benno for an average-sized piece of contract paper, measured it, and then wrote more supply orders based on that information. Benno looked at the supply orders I had just written and his eyes widened. Not a single grammar error or misprint. I'll give this to Mark. And mine? I'll be in as much trouble as you if this paper doesn't get made. So don't look so worried. I'll make sure this works out. If Benno said he would make sure it worked out, well, I could trust that. What you came to talk about? Yes. I nodded and immediately Benno sat up straight, his expression hardening. Lutz and I both straightened up as well, sensing that he was about to talk business. Alright, mine, I want to talk to you about the hair cleaning liquid you told me about. I had told Benno how to make the simple all-in-one shampoo while we were experimenting with paper and borrowing the key for the workshop. Since I had completely given up my rights on the shampoo through contract magic, I had no idea why he would be bringing it up now. I told him I had in confusion, and Benno continued sounding troubled. You said these minerals had the best oil for them, so I waited until this season to start making it. But mineral season is almost over, isn't it? You haven't started yet? Leave me alone. Lutz and I exchanged glances. Indeed, mineral season was almost over. My family had already gathered plenty of minerals, and were in the process of making more shampoo. Benno was so profit-obsessed that I had assumed he already made and sold plenty of it. You're misunderstanding. I bought a large number of the fruit, and had a certain workshop start making the liquid, but even following your instructions, the stuff doesn't end up like what you had. Got any ideas as to why? Said Benno, making my brows reflexively furrow. To make shampoo, you just had to crush fruit, wring out the oil, and add some herbs. I had no idea where there was room for error in that process. Lutz had helped me make it enough times that even he was confused. I don't know what to say. The process for making it isn't that complicated. I could think of various ways to improve the shampoo with certain ingredients, but I couldn't figure out how one could fail to make it in the first place. Tuli and Lutz could both make proper shampoo on their own without any guidance from me. I didn't want to send you out there where people can see you, but if I don't finish that liquid, it'll be a breach of our magic contract. Do you mind coming with me to the workshop? Breaching a magic contract carried with its severe penalties, and worst case scenario, you might die. Just shut up in there! Fearing for my life, I immediately said, okay, but let's grab my arm. Mine, you're not healthy enough for that right now. You aren't in great condition right now, remember? Lutz was right, but it was rare for me to ever be in good condition around this time of year. When it was this cold, I could get a fever anytime, anywhere. I would never get anything done if I didn't just settle for not having a fever, being healthy enough to go to places. But we don't know how long it'll take for me to be in good condition, and there's already a little faint snow falling, so we should go now while I'm not sick with a fever. I get that, but let's begin to worry, and Benno gently wrapped his head to calm him down. Don't sweat it so much, Les. She won't be walking. I'll be carrying her. Not like I could bear to slow down to her pace anyway. Well, I guess that'd be fine, said Les, so Benno once again ended up carrying me. Why hadn't the shampoo making process failed? I had no idea. It had never failed for me before. Would I be able to figure it out? Okay. I think I'm gonna have to end this part off here. I'll see y'all next time.